Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we've got a magical show as we have two amazing acts ready to blow your mind. So let's clear the stage as it's showtime! Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another set review of V-BT09 Butterfly the Moonlight. We already discussed the set review for Dark Irregulars as well as Murakumo, so if you're interested in any of those two clans, then check out the videos right here on top. And otherwise, stick around as right now we're gonna dive into the magical set for Pale Moon, as this set provides the clan with some amazing new support for the entirety of the clan. We've not only got some amazing new archetype support for Nightmare Dolls, Silver Thorns, as well as Gunslew Dragon, but this set also introduces a brand new playstyle with Hurry and its Magia dolls as well as its companions. So there's a lot to talk about, so without any further ado, let's jump straight into the cards, as it's bound to be a magical video with a lot of interesting skills. So we're gonna start off per usual with the reprints, and we of course got two new reprint triggers. Both of them 1 star, as they don't really apply anything else. Then in that same vein, we also got a new heal trigger, which is Tender Breeder, but once again 1 star, as we already have a heal trigger. Then an actual new trigger is a brand new draw trigger, which is Mirror Lord Surmounter, and this is gonna be a 3 star, as it's a brand new draw trigger that can actually be applied in deck building, so it opens up extra options. Then in that same vein, we also have a brand new crit sentinel trigger, which is Darkside Sword Master, and this is once again a 5 star card, as it not only acts as a new trigger but also as a new sentinel type, so a lot of extra options in deck building. Now we also got a new starter, but it's basically a retrain, as we have Happiness Collector. This is just a reprint with a different artwork and a different name, but it's just a generic starter, so it's a 1 star, nothing really special. Let's move on. Then the final card that we're just gonna glimpse over is a brand new vanilla card, and in this case they got the double crit grade 2 variant, and that is Gentle Opener. This is a 1 star for me, as Pale Moon, unlike Dark Irregulars, cannot really abuse this type of vanilla. They multi-tech, yes, they can potentially recall multiple times out the soul, but they cannot give it a high enough power boost to actually make some meaning behind that double crit, and being able to call it out of the soul multiple times forces you to use a lot of other cards and a lot of resources, which is definitely not worth the payout that you will get by playing this card. So definitely 1 star for me. Now before we go into the archetype specific support, as most of the cards in this set for Pale Moon are archetype specific, we've got a couple of generic cards. And the first one I want to take a look at is a grade 1, which is this common Wonder Hanger. And its ability is act on rearguard circle, put this unit into your soul, and one of your rearguards get power +5 until the end of turn. Now, putting it in the soul and giving 5k power, that's not that great. It is a minus, but in Pale Moon's case, you could say, well, then you can call it out the soul once again in mid-battle, or maybe in the main phase with other cards to reactivate the skill if you want to. So, there is some application for this card, but it's not really that strong. So for that, I will give it a 2 star rating. The reason why I give it 2 star instead of 1 star, which you might argue, is because this card could synergize with the Gunslew engine with some new cards that work specifically for Gunslew, but we will get to that in a moment, so keep this card in the back of your mind once we go over those cards. Now the second generic card that we have is this grade 2 Flame Rowdy, and its ability is auto. When retired from Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle during your opponent's turn, you may put this unit into your soul. So this is a skill that we're gonna see on another archetype with the Harry cards, but in this case it's really bad. In Harry's case, those cards are really powerful because not only do they have a similar skill like this, but they also have a secondary skill which actually gives them value outside of just putting them into the soul. This is a grade 2, just putting it into soul doesn't really do anything, because in Pale Moon, you want to put cards into your soul so you can use them for combo pieces during other points in the game, either mid-battle or during the main phase next turn, so you can actually reuse their effects. This, by just putting itself into the soul and doing nothing else, means you're calling out a 9k vanilla card, which doesn't help you at all. And the fact that it also only works during your opponent's turn means that you need to either use it as a Guardian, or you need to hope that your opponent is just going to snipe this thing with either a Kagero or a Shuttle Paladin effect, which they probably won't do. So for that, it's a 1 star card, which I definitely advise you to never play, as it doesn't really give you anything. Then in the same vein, we also have a generic grade 3, which is Blending Burner. And its abilities auto and Vanguard to rearguard circle. When placed from hand, return all of your soul to your deck and shuffle it. And soul charge 1 for each card returned to your deck. So basically this card allows you to reset your soul and have another go. The only application for this card is whenever you have a bad soul setup. So you soul charge a bunch of triggers and you want to do that all over again. The problem is with this card is that the fact that you still get blindly soul charges. So it's very possible that you're just gonna get just as crappy soul as you got before you used this skill. So that means that this grade 3 doesn't really give you any advantage and just give you a chance of fixing your soul. And the problem is with nowadays Pale Moons is that they selectively soul charge. Silver Thorns can just search out Silver Thorn, so you'd never want to use it in the Silver Thorn deck. And even in the new Pale Moon Harry deck, they can selectively search out their key pieces and put them into the soul. So this card, it doesn't help any of those strategies. This card is just an RNG slot machine, which is not great. So for that I will give it a 1 star, and I will definitely advise you to not play this card. Now, the final generic support card is what we would expect. It's the generic grade 3 searcher, which is Masquerade Bunny. Her unique skill to gain 5k power is continuous Vanguard to rearguard circle. If one of your cards were called from the soul this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. This is relatively easy to fulfill, definitely in Pale Moon, no matter what deck you play. Golden Beast Tamer, Silver Thorns, Nightmare Dolls, Gunslew to some extent, and of course the new Harry deck can easily fulfill this condition. Probably will not activate in the early game, can be, but probably not. So it's not as effective in the early game as most other grade 3 searches for the power game, but still nonetheless a really powerful card. And of course, her secondary effect is just as we've seen many times before, so repeat after me. Auto Vanguard to rearguard circle. When placed from hand, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to one grade, and put them in your hand, shuffle your deck, and discard a card from your hand. Yeah, 5 star. We're going to move on. Now, that leaves us at the Archetype specific support cards. And we're going to start off with the one-off Archetype support card for Nightmare Dolls. As we have this grade 1 Nightmare Doll Marion. And her abilities auto from soul. When your Workroid is placed on Vanguard circle, call this card to the rearguard circle. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once per turn. Does not activate when this unit is rode upon. The reason why it doesn't activate when the unit is rode upon is because when you place the grade 2, this card isn't actually in the soul just yet. So it doesn't see the trigger of a Workroid being placed onto the Vanguard circle. So that's why it doesn't really activate. And because of that, this skill is relatively limited, as it only will activate the moment you ride a grade 3. So when you're probably gonna ride Nightmare Doll Alice or Kevrin. And I'm not really all that excited about this card. Yes, you will get a grade 1 for free onto the board, which can help you with certain effects. It can help you flood the board a little bit, but it's not that amazing. And for some reason they had to put the hard once per turn on it. I'm not so sure why they did that or how that will interact. And yes, you have the Superior Ride engine with Carol, but I don't see how you could abuse that with this grade 1, as there's no really an easy way to keep putting this thing back into the soul multiple times in one single turn. But I could be overlooking something here. But it's an interesting key piece to the Nightmare Doll engine. It can give you a potential free plus on the board, as the deck itself doesn't really heavily use soul all that much if you can manage your soul resource. So I will give it a 3-star rating, as it's an interesting key piece for that engine, but probably will not be played in any deck outside of the Nightmare Doll deck. Now let's take a look at a duo of cards which could be seen as generic support cards, but we all know that this is definitely support for Gunslew, as we have this grade 1 Tempting Hoopster, and her ability is auto rearguard circle. When placed, cost your soul has 1 or more, soul blast all of your soul. And one of your Vanguard gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So the wording of this cost is a little bit weird, as it's somewhat of a condition within the cost. So basically, if you have 1 or more soul, then you can soul blast everything to give your Vanguard plus 10k power. This works really well with Gunslew, as you want to empty your soul so you could potentially restand. And because you restand your Vanguard, you want to give it as much power as you can. So not only does this grade 1 give the Gunslew the extra bit of power you want, it also can help you to fulfill for the condition of the restand, which is really good. And if the Gunslew also has the Sentinel Guard restrict on top of that, then there's actually some meaning behind the extra 10k power. Now this card is the reason why I said that Wonder Hanger can actually be useful for the Gunslew deck. Because the problem is, if you have 2 Tempting Hoopsters in your hand, after you resolve one of them, you can no longer resolve the second one as there is no cards in your soul, so you cannot pay for the cost anymore. Now, if you have 2 Tempting Hoopsters and you have the Wonder Hanger in your hand, you can basically activate 1 Tempting Hoopster, empty out the soul, then call down the Wonder Hanger, use its ability to put itself into the soul, give a unit plus 5k power, and then call the second Tempting Hoopster to then utilize its skill again, and then you can give your Vanguard plus 20k power for that turn, which could be really good. So there's that interaction between those 2 cards, and otherwise it's basically a generic support card for Gunslew. Overall, I will give this card a 2-star rating, as Gunslew isn't that amazing, and this card will not be played in anything outside Gunslew because there's no reason to give your Vanguard plus 10k power in Pale Moon, and also there's definitely no reason to empty out your soul, and no actual valid strategy outside of Gunslew. So yeah. Now the second Gunslew support card that we have is this grade 2 Fast Bright Escaper, and her ability is auto. When put into your soul from Rearguard Circle, your soul has 1 or more other cards. Soul Blast all of your soul other than this card, call a card from your soul to the Rearguard Circle, and that unit gets power plus 15k until the end of turn. So this is yet again a Gunslew support card, because yes, there are multiple ways to put this thing into the soul, but in no other Pale Moon deck, again, do you want to Soul Blast your entire soul just to get 1 extra unit out of the soul for an extra attack. In Gunslew, however, this works perfectly with the engine, because the moment that you restand it, you're going to shove your entire field into the soul. So that means if you have at least 1 other unit onto the board, which you'll probably have it to grade 1, then you can use her ability, Soul Blast that grade 1 or whatever other cards you just put in soul, and recall her immediately to the field, and she gained that extra 15k power. That, on the Exo Circle, means she will become a 29k beater after your Vanguard already swing once, so even if they get a defensive trigger, it still hits for an actual decent number. So that allows the Gunslew deck to actually get some extra abilities off and extra attacks. Now, again, I will give it 2 stars because for the same reason as the grade 1, you're not going to play this in any other Pale Moon deck for actual reason, maybe just to cheese something out or maybe some next level IQ strats, but it's definitely for Gunslew deck, and this will probably make the deck a bit more playable, but not that great. Now, with Gunslew out of the way, let's take a look at the Silver Thorn archetype, as we also got some Silver Thorn support cards. And we're going to take a look at the grade 1, which is surprisingly also very generic, as we have Silver Thorn, Handle Grip, Linnea. And Linnea's ability is auto Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When it attacks or boosts, Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it's similar to what we see with Midnight Bunny, that can help you get soul over turns, which is really good. But instead of getting the potential on hit effect that you could recall something, this is just a generic 13k attacker booster. This is really good. It's super generic. It can help any Pale Moon deck out there, and it's also really good for the Silver Thorn decks, as it allows you to fill out your soul in the early game as effective and as consistent as possible. So I think it's a solid 3-star card. It's not amazing in the sense that it will do amazing plays. It's just a consistency bump to whatever Pale Moon deck you want, and it can help the Silver Thorn decks to be a bit more aggressive, but again, Silver Thorns are better at selective soul charging than just blindly soul charging. So there are some ups and downs with this card. Now, the second Silver Thorn card that we have is this grade 2 Silver Thorn Diva Selvia. And Selvia's ability is auto Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Choose up to 2 cards with Silver Thorn in their card names, not named Silver Thorn Diva Selvia from soul, and call them to the Rearguard Circle. So this might sound weird in comparison to the previous Silver Thorn Lucier, as that already could fill out an entire board. So what's the reason to call this card and use its ability? Well, there are 2 applications for this card. One, it's the early game. If you write this thing or call to the Rearguard Circle on grade 2, you can use this effect to be very aggressive out of the gate and apply some pressure before you go into your main grade 3 swings where you try to win the game. So this allows you to be a bit more aggressive. And together with the grade 1 we just talked about, it can actually get targets in your soul for that. Now, the second application has to do with the brand new Lucier, because that Lucier can only call to the front row, meaning your back row is still empty, and that means you have 2 solid places onto the field where you can call units. So this grade 2 then allows you to call those back row boosters to then fill out your entire board. So this card synergizes with the new look here, as well as the ability to give Silver Thorns a more aggressive grade 2 game. So overall, for that value, I will give it a 4-star rating, as it's very restrictive to Silver Thorns, so it will not help any other engine within Pale Moon, but at least it gives Silverthorn something else to do than just a generic, we swarm on grade 3, we hit for high numbers, then we disappear, and next turn we do that all over again. So with that said, we're going to take a look at the brand new VR for Silverthorns, as we have Silverthorn Dragon Empress Venus Lucriere. And Venus Lucriere's abilities are Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if all your front row circles have units, all your front row units get power plus 5k. So everything plus 5k, that also includes herself. That's a nice power bump. It's somewhat similar to what the previous Silverthorn deck did, as pseudo extent, Lucriere gives everything plus 3k, but only the units that are then present. So if you swap things, it can be cluttered a bit. This is just a continuous ability, which actually helps a little bit with another card to Silverthorns, as it also synergizes with Silverthorn Dragon, Fire Breath Dragon, or the Great One that allows you to multi-tag with a unit in the front row. That can give the second unit and an additional 5k power. That's actually pretty nice, as it makes the multi-tag a bit more consistent, or at least a little bit more value. But the main attraction lies in her secondary effect, as says act on Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, cost +1, and discard a card from your hand and call any number of cards with Silverthorn in their card names from your soul to the front row rearguard circle. At the end of that turn, cost, you may have 4 more rearguards and put all of your rearguards into the soul and get an imaginary gift XL. So to digest what this card can do, it has 2 abilities within this singular ability. For 1 Counterblast and a discard, you can build an entire front row. So as I explained with the grade 2, you cannot build your back row. So if you call the grade 2, you can use her ability to then also call 2 boosters. So if you take those costs together, for 2 Counterblast and a discard, you can build an entire board. That's identical to the previous Lucriere. So this Lucriere, together with the grade 2, can be on par with the previous Lucriere. That might sound bad, but actually that is to some extent an upgrade, and it gives you more option, because the problem with the previous Lucriere is that that card could be Counterblast denied, as it needed 2 Counterblast to even do something. This card can at least build a field with 1 Counterblast. So even if you have 1 Counterblast face up, you can do some plays, which can help you to close out games or just keep pressure up for every single turn. And because this can be your new main Vanguard unit, means that the previous Lucriere with a strong rearguard effect can be your new supporting grade 3, as seen as Dorian is limited at 1. Speaking of Dorian, her secondary effect of this second effect allows you to put everything into the soul to gain an Excel marker. This is basically Dorian's effect, but then in this Lucriere. So to some extent, this Lucriere is a combination of the previous Lucriere and Dorian. The only change up here is that the old Dorian could draw you cards for an X amount that you put into the soul, and could fetch you also the grade 3 from soul to then rewrite next turn. In this case, you don't rewrite next turn, but you immediately gain that Excel circle, so you also get that draw preemptively, so you could also potentially use this as a defensive option. Now, is that inherently better than Dorian? Not really, because you get less draws, but this Lucriere is basically another way to get the skill off, especially in this situation where we only have a one-off Dorian, so it's a nice substitution in that case. So Venus Lucriere in herself doesn't replace any of the previous grade 3s that are the old Lucriere as well as Dorian, but it gives the archetype another option, another playability card that can substitute somewhere between those cards and can give those cards a different role within the deck. That in itself is amazingly good, because it just makes the deck outright better and gives the clan or the archetype more options. And it also allows certain other cards which weren't all that good at first hand, now also potentially some playability, like Breathing Dragon, because now not only do you use less Counterblast per turn, you can also give units passive power increase, making multi-attack strategies more consistent, or at least more viable. So for that, I think Venus Lucriere is an obvious 5-star card in my book, as it's a really good card that can help the Silverthorn engine to do something a bit better than they were doing before this came out. Now, with the Silverthorn archetype out of the way, we're going to take a look at the final archetype, that is of course the brand new Harry deck with all its companions and Magia dolls. And before we go into that, we need to take a look at Harry himself, so we have an understanding of what we're working with and how all these cards will interact with him and interact with each other. So here we have the new main unit of that deck, Masked Magician Harry. And its abilities are Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, choose one of your additional rearguard circle, and it becomes the stage until the end of that fight. Until end of this fight, the stage becomes your only additional rearguard circle, and move all Axel markers to this stage. So basically, the moment that Harry enters the field as your Vanguard unit, you will cap the amount of extra circles you can make. You will only have one, but all markers will move into that one, and all new markers will be built on top of that, so you're gonna build a bigger and bigger stage, and that means that all the extra power you will accumulate will increase. So if you use Axel 1, the first circle, it will be 10k. Then if you generate another Axel circle, it will be 20, then 30, then plus 40, then plus 50, then plus 60. So it will then become stronger and stronger and stronger. With Axel 2, it will be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. But every time you generate one extra plank on that stage, you will draw a card just like you will do per usual with Axel 2. So basically you stack those Axel markers on top of each other. So that's an interesting thing, but it will come up later. Now, his other effect is act on Vanguard Circle once per turn, cost counterblast 1, and discard a card from your hand. Call up to 2 cards with Magia in their different card names, so they cannot be the same cards, from your soul to the rearguard circle. And they get power plus 5k until the end of turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you may call up to 4 cards instead of 2, but still they need to have different names. So for one counterblast and one discard, you could either call 2 units, so that's potentially a plus 1 onto the field, but for the counterblast, that makes sense. And if your opponent is grade 3, you get 4 units, which is actually pretty good value. But also don't forget they get the extra 5k power, so if you build columns, those columns will gain additional 10k in total, which means you can actually hit for decent numbers, and that together with the stage, which can build up a lot of power, means most of your attacks, besides your center column so far, will be pretty powerful. Now, this already sounds pretty decent, but it becomes even better once we take a look at the Magia dolls and the rest of the support cards around that. So let's do that. So the first Magia dolls we're going to call for other grade 1s, and this is one of them, Magia doll Flying Peryton. And its ability, and this is a skill that's shared with all the Magia dolls, which are 4 in total, as that is auto, when retired from the Guardian Circle, you may put this card into your soul. So if you call them to the Guardian Circle from your hand, you can immediately put them into the soul after that battle, which is really nice, as that means you can still use them for shield value, and then set that up for once you go into Harry and then call them immediately to the field. And with your grade 2s, you can still intercept with them, and once they get retired, they then move into the soul. So you can basically recycle them and keep calling them out and do that over and over again, which is a really good skill in combination with Harry. This is what I meant with the grade 2 we talked at the beginning of this video, which skill was really bad as it didn't synergize with anything else, and also didn't do anything else because Peryton, and like all the other Magia dolls, will have a secondary effect. And in Peryton's case, that is auto rearguard circle. When placed by your unit's ability with Harry in its card name, draw a card. So when you call this out with Harry, you then immediately draw a card. So that's interesting because, as we've seen with Harry, his ability to call them out of the soul costs a counterblast and a discard. So if you call it a Peryton, you immediately refund that discard. So suddenly you get 2 units onto the field for just the cost of a counterblast. That's actually pretty alright. And in premium, this is even better because it just asks for a unit with the Harry name. So if you have a Harry Vanguard or a Harry Stride, then that can synergize with all kinds of crazy things. So that's really good. So this already, in my book, is a solid 4-star card. It doesn't really do a lot, but it works really perfectly with the engine, and it gives the engine much more fuel to keep going with what it wants to do. Now, the second grade 1 that we have is Magia doll Darkside Mirror Master, and of course that's the auto ability to move itself into the soul from the Guardian Circle, but her unique ability is auto rearguard circle. When placed by her unit's ability with Harry in its card name, counter charge 1. So Peryton can give you a draw, Mirror Master can give you the counter charge. So them together can refund the cost of Harry's ability. So if you have these 2 cards into the soul and you use Harry's ability and you call those 2 specifically out, you basically call them for free from the soul, which is really nice. And once again, in premium, this can synergize really nicely with whatever Harry grade 3 or whatever Harry Stride you're gonna play with, and you can get a counter charge engine on demand, which can be really powerful. So for that, Once again, I think it's a solid 4-star card. It's a simple skill, but it works really effectively for what she does. Then, once we go into the grade 2 department of the Magia dolls, we see Magia doll Prana. And Prana's ability is, of course, the auto put itself into soul once it's retired from the Guardian Circle. But her unique ability is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed by your unit's ability with Harry in its card name, this unit and one of your Vanguards gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So not only did I state that Harry can give the side columns plus 10k, so the side columns will already hit for a pretty decent number, Prana can give herself another 10k, so that column could potentially get an increase of 20k, so that's a really beefy number. But now we can also give Harry an increase of 10k, so now every column will hit for at least a significant number. So that means that this deck for Harry can hit for pretty hard, and as we're gonna figure out very soon, we also have some multi-tag and guard restrict on top of all of that. So Prana, really good card. It's a solid 4-star card. The 10k power buff for free on 2 units can be really impactful for the deck itself. So it's pretty decent. It's pretty good as a grade 2. And as a grade 2, you can refund it so it can keep putting itself back into the soul, which is really nice. Now, the other grade 2 that we have, and this is arguably the weakest among the Magia dolls, but could still be very effective in the right circumstances, is Magia doll Lunatic Dragon. It has, of course, the auto ability to put itself into the soul, but it also has this unique ability, which is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed by your unit's ability with Harry in its card name, choose up to one of your opponent's rear guards, and your opponent put that unit into his or her soul. This is basically a spot removal, but the problem is that yes, we remove that unit, but we give our opponent resources by doing that. In some situations, you do not mind putting it into the soul, as not everybody can utilize the soul as effective, and it might be just stuck there without actually getting value. But this is inherently weaker than just flat out retiring it. Only maybe in Grand Blue's case, but then again, Grand Blue can still Soul Blast the card with ease. So, yes, it's a control option, which is nice, but it will not always be effective. And in the mirror match, this is outright dangerous. So, for that, I will give it a 3-star rating. It's still Magia doll, which you want to play. It helps the engine, but its unique ability is not the greatest. Now, with the Magia dolls discussed, let's take a look at the companion cards, as there are 2 specific companions that are necessary to make this deck work. As so far, we've seen beefy numbers and cards that we can call out the soul with Harry. But it doesn't allow us to multi-tag, and once we set up our board, we cannot really do anything besides that, as they are just stuck there, except for grade 2s, which we can potentially shove back into the soul. For that, there comes this grade 2, and this grade 2 changes everything, as we have Lore, Pigeon, Pup, the bird or the pigeon of Harry. And its abilities are Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, put up to 1 card with Magia doll in its card name from your drop zone into the soul. So this card allows you to set up the soul for Harry, which is really good, because not only can it help you if you for some reason lost certain units, if you're up against a control clan that just burns your units off the field, you can still put them back, but it can also help you to put those grade 1s back, as yes, the grade 2s can keep potentially recycle themselves into the soul with the interceptor ability that they have. The grade 1s do not have that luxury, so you need to find a way to put those grade 1s back into the soul. Lord Pigeon Pup can help you do that, but that's not the only main addition to this card, because we also have its second effect, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle, it attacked. If this unit is on stage, cost counter +1 and return this unit to your hand. Search your deck, soul, or drop zone for up to 1 Starry Pop Dragon, call it to stage, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So this, at the end of the battle, could bounce itself back to the hand and search out the other supporting cards, which is a grade 4 dragon, and immediately call to the stage. So this card needs to be on the stage to then recall another grade 4 onto that stage. That's really nice, because this is an inherent multi-tech strategy which utilizes the stage, which again is a circle which stacks axle markers, so at some point that's gonna be a beefy extra free power you're gonna generate on this unit as well as the second unit. But it also bounces itself back to the hand, meaning it's safe from harm. Your opponent cannot remove this thing fast enough to combat that scenario, unless you're playing premium, but that's a different story. In standard, there's no way to remove this thing in time to combat this multi-attack strategy. That in itself is really nice already. But the fact that this card searches that specific unit from the deck, soul, and drop zone means you will always find the target, no matter where it is, unless you're very unlucky and you draw in onto them. But you can maybe discard it with the skill for Harry, or use it as a PG fodder or something else. So there's always a reason to utilize this skill to its max potential. So not only is this the most easiest way to get multi-attack effectively, it filters your deck to some extent, it helps to set up your engine for Harry as you can put the Magia dolls to the soul, and it utilizes this stage to its maximum capacity. Without this card, the Harry deck will probably be not as good as it is, so for that it's definitely a 5-star card. And it together with another grade 2 saves this deck in my opinion. So Lord Pigeon Pop is definitely MVP. So we've seen Lord Pigeon Pop and it talked about Starry Pop Dragon. So let's take a look at the Starry Pop Dragon, as that's arguably our win condition for this deck. As here we have a grade 4 Starry Pop Dragon. Now keep note, its power is 0. So it doesn't really do anything besides gaining power out the Excel circles where it's going to be on with this stage. So you need a lot of stage markers to actually make this thing a beefy number. But it also has some other effects attached to it, as it has a couple of skills. So its abilities are continuous on rearguard circle. This unit gets power plus 5k for each of your rearguards with Magia doll in their different card names. So it not only gains the power of the stage that you built, where you place this thing on top of, but it also can potentially get an extra 20k power if you have all the Magia dolls onto the board. So it can be a nice beefy boy that's maybe around 15 to 25k the moment you call it on the first turn, as she has one Excel marker which is plus 5k potentially, and then depending on how many Magia dolls you have, it can be even higher than that. But there's even more, as its second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed on stage, get an imaginary gift XL. So not only does the Lord Pigeon Pop bounce itself back to then recall this thing onto that stage, you then also get another Excel marker for free, which is probably an Excel 2, so you get another draw of it, and that then goes underneath that stage, and it means Starry Pop Dragon gets another 5k. So on the very first grade 3 turn, it is inherently a 10k unit, plus the extra 5k power you can generate with all your Magia dolls. So it could be a very powerful attacker, no problem. But it has even another skill which makes it even better, as that effect is Auto Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, if this unit's power is 40k or greater, until the end of the battle, this unit gets critical +1, and your opponent cannot call sentinels from his or her hand at the end of the battle. Retire this unit. So not only do you generate high beefy columns in your main columns, you also have a unit which is arguably hitting for a decent number that can then recall this thing onto the board for extra multi-attacks, which then will probably be a beefy boy that could then swing in with an extra crit and the Sentinel Guard Restrict. That's really powerful if things go right, because there are some issues with this card that I need to highlight. For one, the elephant in the room, it's a grade 4. So that already in itself makes the deck a little bit less consistent, as that means you'll run less grade 3s. And this deck arguably wants to sit on Harry. If you do not have Harry as your Vanguard, the deck doesn't really do anything. On top of that, this card is 0 power, so it relies on all kinds of outsiding factors to actually make it a decent number. It needs multiple Excel circles stacked on top of the stage to give it some power, and you need to have multiple Magia dolls onto the field to actually reach it high enough numbers that it matters. Now, to reach the 40k threshold, there are two things that you can do. One of those things is go for Excel 1, because if you go for Excel 1, that means the moment that it enters the field, you will get 2 Excel 1s, that's already 20k power, and if you have all 4 Magia dolls onto the board, that's another 20k power, so it immediately hits 40. Now you can still go for Excel 2, because you want to have the extra draws, because why not? But that means you'll have 10k less power if you have the entire board filled with Magia dolls. So that's 30k. So you're 10k short. But luckily, the skill condition states when the dragon attacks, so you can still attack with the Vanguard first, and if you get a trigger, you can stack the trigger on top of it, and then it reaches the 40k threshold. So there are ways to reach the 40k threshold on the very first turn, but it's only if you can also call an entire board with Magia dolls. So with everything in mind, and the consistency issues it might bring up, but the actual playability of this card and the amount of power it brings to the table, all things considered, I think it's a solid 4-star card. It's not the most amazing kind of Great Force or finisher you could ask for, but it works with the engine and it gives the deck the pushing power it will need to actually close games fast enough to then not falter on the opponent's weight. Now, if these were the only cards for the Magia Doll deck for Harry, then the deck will definitely have some consistency issues, as you will need to find fast enough ways and consistent enough ways to get all those Magia Dolls in your soul. If you do not get them there, you do not draw them, you will not get the full potential of all your cards, and especially for Starry Prop Dragon. Now, there are, luckily enough, 2 cards that can help us with this problem. And one of those cards is this grade 1 Moonlight Melody Tamer Betty. And her abilities are Auto Vanguard Circle, when placed, draw a card, and put a card from your hand into the soul. This effect alone is really good, as it is a cycle effect, but it allows you to put something in the soul. This is similar to what we've seen yesterday, or 2 days ago when we did the Dark Irregular set review, as they have a grade 1 with the exact identical skill, and it's really nice for Dark Irregulars, and especially for Pale Moon, as Pale Moon can actually utilize those specific units you put in the soul for multi-tech strategies, or in Harry's case, for getting those Magia Dolls ready. So that's really nice. And then it also has a secondary effect, act on Rearguard Circle, cost, rest this unit, look at the free cards from the top of your deck, put a card with Magia Doll in its card name from among them into your soul, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is similar to what we've seen with a Silver Thorn card that could then put any Silver Thorn cards deck from the top 3 into the soul once you rest it. The only issue here is that you can only put 1 Magia Doll, so even if you hit 3 Magia Dolls, you cannot put them all into the soul, which is a bit of a bummer here. But there is another problem with this card, which inherently makes this card effectively worse than what it actually can be, and that's the fact that it doesn't really help you with the rest of the engines. Yes, it allows you to put the Magia Dolls into the soul, but the problem is that it can also backfire on you in the fact that if you hit all triggers or other cards that aren't Magia Dolls, like Lore Pigeon Pop, Starry Pop Dragon, or Harry, or maybe another copy of herself, those cards are going to go to the bottom of the deck, and you will probably not see them for the rest of the game, as unlike Silverthorn Engine, you're not going to go fast enough through your deck to actually make a meaningful stack out of it. So that could inherently screw you over here a little bit. And there's another problem for this card, and that's the fact that it's a grade 1. Our grade 1 slots already jam-packed, as we are going to run max copies of both Magia Doll grade 1s, as they're really good, but we're also probably going to run the Masquerade Bunny, as we're only going to run Harry as our main grade 3, and we need to get to Harry as consistent as possible. So for that, I will give it a 3-star rating. It's not outright terrible, it's just a consistency bump, but it's not as great as we had hoped it to be for the Magia Doll deck. Now, with that said, there is a card that's actually incredibly powerful and works perfectly for the Magia Doll deck, as we have this grade 2 card dealer, Jacqueline. And Jacqueline's ability is Auto Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost countable as 1, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, so that's already a lot more cards you're looking through. Reveal up to a total of 2 Lord Pigeon Pop or cards with Magia Doll in the card names from among them, put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you reveal 2 cards, put a card from your hand into the soul. This is incredibly powerful. This is outright a 5-star card. Not only do you check top 7, which basically confirms that you're going to hit at least 1 hit, but not only are you looking at Magia Dolls, you also are looking for your main important key card that isn't a Magia Doll, that is Lore Pigeon Pop. Without Lore Pigeon Pop, you do not do your multi-deck combos, and without those multi-deck combos, the deck might not be strong enough to finish out games. So this is incredibly good in the fact that you also put them to your hand, and because you first put them into your hand and then potentially put a card from your hand into the soul, means that it's even better because maybe for some reason in the top 7 you get a Magia Doll that already is in the soul, but you have a Magia Doll card in your hand that isn't in the soul. Now with this skill, you can still add those cards to your hand and then put the other Magia Doll into the soul for this effect, which means you can set up a lot of options. So there are a lot more lines of plays that this card provides than what the grade 1 Betty does for the deck. So with that said, it definitely warrants the 5-star rating that I want to give this card. With everything said and done, once we go back to Masked Magician Harry, we can see how powerful this card is with the entire engine around it. The Magia that allows you to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Lure Pigeon Pop with Star Pop Dragon that allows you to multi-tag and utilize the stage as effectively as it does. And of course the consistency cards like Jacqueline that helps you to increase the consistency to some insane levels. Makes the deck already really powerful. But that's just the main package that this set itself provides. There are some extra interesting things you can do with already present cards. A good card to think about is Nightmare Doll Alice, because Nightmare Doll Alice allows you to utilize that stage to even more insanity, as you can call Nightmare Doll Alice, then utilize her multi-tech skill to then call out a Lure Pigeon Pop from your soul onto that stage, and then use that Lure Pigeon Pop to then recall the dragon onto that stage, so you get one more extra attack off of that stage, which can be insanely powerful in the right circumstances. And that's just the beginning of the crazy things you can do, and all the other cards that are providing this deck or this card to do the plays that it wants to do. And with that said, it's for me obvious to give this card a solid 5-star rating, as this is a centerpiece to a deck that's really powerful and has a lot of options to play around and can potentially still benefit from future sets. Yes, it has some archetype restrictions with the Magia dolls being restricted to each other and how the deck plays, but as I explained just with the Nightmare Doll Alice play, there is definitely room for other cards to come in and help the deck to do some extra interesting things that might not be as inherent with just the Magia dolls themselves. So I have hope that this deck could potentially evolve into something much more in the future. So definitely a solid 5-star card in my opinion. And that also concludes the set review for Pale Moon. As we've seen, a lot of interesting cards. It's also the biggest card chunk from this set, as we got 2 main archetypes, 2 VRs that are supported within this set, and an entire deck is built from this set with the Magia dolls. So there's a lot of interesting things to look forward to as a Pale Moon player. As we got the entire Harry deck, we've got the Silver Thorn support cards, we even have Gunslew cards, we also have a new Nightmare Doll card, and just some generic cards which in a general sense aren't that great, but maybe you can find something with it. But even when you disregard those cards, there's definitely something for any Pale Moon player out there in this set. So I think it's an amazing set for Pale Moon players, and it's definitely one of those sets that you want to get your hands on. So with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards for Pale Moon from V-BT09 Butterfly the Moonlight. I think it's a unanimous positive reaction for this set, as there's a lot of interesting things to find in this set. And even if you're not that fond of a certain archetype, there's definitely support for something that you like to play if you like to play with Pale Moon. So let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/Vanguard Insider for supporting this video and everything happening on the channel. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Tyleep, and I see you guys in the next one.